and the crew as well. Si vieran cómo batallaron. The crew was here from 8 in the morning to 2 a.m., fixing lights, setting up lights, and, doing everything. Their electrician working and them setting up a whole little village backstage. And so we want to say to all of you, the actors from Dallas, from Cara Mia Theater, all of you, thank you very much for coming and sharing your talents with us. That all of San Antonio, South Texas, everybody has just told me how much they've loved and appreciated your work and the stories and the memories that you're bringing up and the new information you're sharing with us. So, muchísimas gracias y a ver cuándo los vemos otra vez aquí en San Antonio, okay? I got it. And last but not least, I do want to recognize el director de Cara Mia Theater, Mr. David Lozano, the playwright.
Well, this has been one of the best experiences of my life, and I mean that. And I want to say that to Jorge Piña, a legend in Chicano theater, and definitely and when Cara Mia tours, and especially when someone provides funding for Cara Mia Theater to tour, I go to the places that Jorge built. And so here we came to Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. We've been to Talento Bilingüe because he has built communities and generations of people who understand what teatro means. And it's more than entertainment. It's cultura, it's propósito, it's vida, comunidad y familia. And so for us, this is much bigger than just performing a play. This is how we write our own destinies. And so this is why I follow the footsteps of Jorge Piña. And this is why that we continue Teatro Chicano in the legacy of those who came before us. And I have to say, this is why the story of Crystal City has been the most important story for me to tell in my life. And I'll say this last thing, that when we know who we are, we know what to fight for. And when we don't, we're lost. And when we have a theater full of people, we have 5 performances full of 300 plus people, this is the moment for us to unite with cultura, la política, and with a mission to change our world. So this is only going to happen when we work among the generations. So here we have the young generation from Crystal City High School here today. And generations after generations. So thank you so much for hosting Cara Mia for Crystal City. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Christina and Maggie from the Center of Mexican American Studies who made this tour stop possible. Viva la raza!
Thank you. Once again, thank you very much. Y no se nos vayan. We're calling our special guests up onto the stage now. And yes, we do want to say welcome, bienvenidos to all the students from Crystal City. Que aquí están, vinieron, they brought them over from Crystal City. So we're very happy that you're here with us and you get to enjoy this. All right, so I think we're starting our live stream now. I'm going to invite Melanie Mendez-Gonzalez up to the stage, who is a local blogger and a media specialist from blog Que Means What, and she's been spending time building up her media audience. I'm also going to call up Sarah Gould, la doctora Sarah Gould, who's the director of MACRI, the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute of San Antonio, and we have 2 special guests. We have some of the main characters of the play, el doctor José Ángel Gutierrez. Please welcome him. And also a special guest, Luz Bazan Gutierrez, who's also with us here today. You know, pásenle para arriba. And come on over, have a seat. Have a seat. I'm going to let you guys take the hot seat over there, and I'm going to pass it over to Melanie, who's good.
There she is. Awesome. Sarah's coming. Thank you, Christina. Thank you so much. Please sit there. Yes. So give me just 1 second. I got to get organized. I'm going to multitask here. I have my my tools up here because we are live streaming. Unless we're not, someone tell me when we're on, if we're not on already. So welcome to Facebook and YouTube viewers as well. We appreciate you being here. My name is Melanie Mendez-Gonzalez, and like Christina said, I started ¿Qué Means What 12 years ago because I didn't know where I came from, and I wanted to explore where my heritage, and I just thought it'd be great to invite the whole entire internet to do it with me. So that's what happened there, and here we are. I never thought that I'd get to be on stage with civil rights leaders having this conversation. And so thank you, Christina. Thank you, the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. A round of applause for the staff, please, because they are amazing at the center. They do so much. Thank you so much. I also want to say thank you to Raul Trevino and David Lozano, who was just up here for creating this play and allowing so many more of us to get to learn about it and hear the stories. Luz, it's nice to meet you. Welcome back, Dr. Jose Angel. And Sarah, welcome. So glad to have you here. If anyone's not familiar, Sarah is Executive Director of MACRI, the Mexican-American Center for, Mexican-American Civil Rights Institute, which is a premier national organization dedicated to chronicling and advancing the Mexican-American community's civil rights efforts in the U.S. So, let's get started. I will be looking at my iPad to see if there are any comments or questions coming in. I'm going to ask this great panel a few questions, and then we're going to open it up to all of you for comments and questions. So hang on to those, and about halfway through, we'll pass a microphone around the audience so you all can ask questions as well. Welcome, students. I'm so glad to see all of you here. Let's get started. I can't see y'all. Oh, you say hello, hello. Okay, great. How can you see? I can't see.
I can't either.
Okay, so I would like to ask each of you, the cast is amazing, right? They do such a great job. Right, so what are your first initial thoughts about the play itself? We'll get into what happened in Crystal City, but what about the play? Dr. Jose Angel?
It's such a welcome event because it's ours. You know, you sitting there looking at me, I was a student in Cristal when your grandparents were born. Your grandparents. And things were just as bad then for me as what you saw up here. And that's why I went to Cristal as well as other Mayo leaders went across the state to fix those problems for the future. And here we are now with Uvalde. There's people here from Uvalde. Would you all kind of make noise? It's still here. It's an unfinished agenda, so that's why.
Welcome back to San Antonio. Luz, what did you think of the play?
It was amazing. Okay. It was amazing. I'm sorry I got here late. I live in Yakima, Washington, and I had just flown in. So, but to see these young people here is really important. And to see the actors, and they are actors, by the way, they're fabulous. I got so many calls and texts telling me that the girl that played me was just like me. So that tells you that those are very good actors, okay? And I think the message they give is the message that's beginning to resonate right now. has anything changed? And that is the message. Has anything changed? Has anything changed? And we have a lot of work to do, but we're reaching our age where we're mellowing a little bit. I don't think so, but a little bit. And we need young people to take the torch, you know, and I think this is a great example of that.
I really want to commend the Guadalupe on 5 sold-out shows. Today, I got to see it for the second time. I got to see it on Thursday. 5 sold-out shows. I hope that funders are paying attention to this. This play is not new. I confirmed with the Cara Mia staff in the back. This play debuted in 2009. So it had several runs in Dallas, and now 5 sold-out shows here. Our people want to see these stories. So funders, fund Cara Mia, fund the Guadalupe. Netflix, Hulu, are you paying attention?
Hello.
That's what I have to say.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be great to see it on streaming or in a theater on the silver screen. So let's talk about what actually happened in Crystal City, if you will reflect with me, Jose and Luz. When we spoke with some of the guests on stage last night, and they're here in the audience again, one of the questions that was asked was, why was the walkout in Crystal City different? There were many walkouts. You had led many walkouts before this one, but this one worked. Why was Crystal City different?
You know, when we were active, there were no books. There were no mentors. There was nobody to tell us how to do what we had to do. It was just rage that we had inside, that we felt we must do something. Now, when you walk out of here tonight, look to the right and look at that corner building. That used to be El Progreso drugstore. On the second floor, 4 windows down, that was the little bitty office that we could afford as Mayo. And sometimes we couldn't pay the rent, but the landlord, George Osuna and company, they wouldn't throw us out. Now, later, we found a building down the street that you now recognize as the Mexican-American Unity Council. That was the first 501c3. That's an IRS code that gives you a tax exemption status. So that funders that Sarah is asking to notice us can give you money as well as anybody else and get a tax deduction. We took over that building, held it for 4 days until they decided that it was too expensive politically for them to throw us out, arrest us, and so on. Because when we were arrested, not just in Cristal, but in Del Rio, in the Valley, in Houston, San Antonio, we would stay in jail. We would ask for a jury trial. That clogs up the system. It doesn't work for them when you do that. So numbers, as you heard the commentary, numbers count. So we learned. We did several walkouts, and we didn't do well. Because first, the usual charge, you still hear it today. They're communists. They don't believe in God. They're troublemakers. You know, they're this, they're that, and the other. Well, part of that was because we weren't from those communities. We were going to organize. The first walkouts were here in San Antonio for us. Lanier, Edgewood, Fox, and so on. Now, you're not going to believe this, but you all have seen the HBO movie Walkout. 4 weeks before we did those here, they happened over there. No internet, no fax, no 800 number. It was just our generation. Our grandparents, like your great-grandparents, came from Mexico most of the time. My parents came from Mexico. They wanted to get along. They wanted to fit in. We came along, born here, not coming from Mexico, born here. We didn't think we needed to get along. We didn't think there was anything wrong with us. We liked our tacos and our mucho Spanish. That was us. Las polcas, el conjunto, that was us. So we used to say to people, we don't care you gringos don't love us. We love ourselves. So we began to be a separate generation, not seeking to apologize and demanding they teach about us. I didn't like to hear about the Alamo and want to be Davy Crockett. I would say in class, but the Mexicans won at the Alamo. But you don't hear that part. You don't hear any part about us. So that's still going on today. What you learn is about them. You don't learn about you. And in Florida, you got this crazy governor who makes this illegal now in Florida to talk about our histories. And they're saying that we can't discuss this because we make them feel bad. They don't want to discuss the racism that's going on and has gone on in this country. Those were the feelings that we had, and we had to go tell people, why can't we talk about us? Why can't we be the center focus? Why do we have to learn about them? And now when we're look at your school district. Look at your school board, look at your teachers. Why are you still talking about them? You have to come to San Antonio to see this play when it happened in your town. So we learned over time, and we corrected 31 walkouts, okay? By 31, we got, well, about 28. Cristal, I think, was about number 28. We got it right. As you saw the parents, you saw the role of Luz talking to the women, because, you know, back then, you heard it there, los gallos cantamos mucho, pero las mujeres ponen, las gallinas ponen. So, and if the women don't want, they go on boycott and say, well, duerme solo. Okay. So we learned with each walkout, we learned how to do it better and better until we finally got it. And when we got it right, because we not only took over the school board, the city council, the county government, y ahí te vas, okay? I'll just end with this. Then, there were only 26 counties. Then, we're talking 69, 70, 71. We know this because the census gets reported in 71, okay? It's taken in 70, years numbered in 0. You get the numbers reported out in the years ending in 1, so you can figure out, you know, what's going on. 26 counties in Texas out of 254 had a majority of Mexicanos as residents. We knew then, as we know now, that you can cut half of that group because they're under 18 y no cuentan. And you can get another half of that half, and 26% are not citizens. So it leaves a very small number of us, but we can count and we can win. Today, 26 back then. Today, 138 counties have those statistics. Why is Texas not ours? Because we don't take it. We don't organize at the local level to fulfill our destiny.
Thank you, Dr. Gutierrez. You bring up a lot of points there that I wanted to get into this conversation, is that we're not organizing. How do we do it? What does it look like today? But before we get to that, Luz, if there's anything you want to add, but I actually would really love to hear from you. What was depicted in the play was that you were talking to the women, y'all were both talking to the parents, and also from last night's conversation, the students said that Crystal City was different because they had the support of their parents.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that because without the women, none of this would have happened. That's the reality. When I got to Cristal, when we went to organize in Cristal, and I wasn't from Cristal, I'm from Falfurrias, Texas. And I had come from another generation, right? And so I was trying, just like a lot of kids are, they were trying to speak English well so that they can get accepted. They were trying to have some friends that are gringos, you know. I came from that kind of environment, and when I got to Cristal, I said, whoa, this is a whole different, they are really anti-Mexican, you know, and anti-Chicano. And so while he spent a lot of time working with the men who really controlled the atmosphere at the time, I didn't have a lot to do, basically, other than have my 2 children. And so I think when we had that incident in Ciudadanos Unidos was organized by the men, yes. And so we would cook, for the event all the time, tamales, menudo, chicharrones, whatever. We were always, the women were always providing the food. And Jose Serna at the time was the chair of Ciudadanos Unidos. And so they'd sit around, and I remember I'd watch them sitting around the, ¿cómo se llama? Campestre, ¿verdad? Sitting around. And then I said, but where are we? And a lot of the young ones, young women started saying, hey, and people, other women that were involved in doing all the work and the outreach and that were doing a lot of what I call the outreach work. They said, well, wait a minute. How come we are not going to be we're not in that circle? And so we had a meeting, and the women said, no, we've got to stop this shit. Basically, that's what we said. And so we ended up getting together, and instead of taking food, we said we wanted to be part of Ciudadanos Unidos, and so they took a vote. And initially, the majority of the people, including Mr. Serna, who I had high respect for, said they didn't want us. And they didn't want the women there, and they didn't want their wives there for sure, And so by the next meeting, we had the younger women involved, the Treviños and the Severita and people like that involved with saying, well, you know what? If they're not going to accept us as equals, we're not going to feed them. That's it, buddy. We're done. We're done with menudo, and we're done with all the tamales and all that. And that had a big impact on what happened in the future. and so Mr. Serna, who I love, Diana, I don't know if she's here today. Oh, okay. But Olivia was very strong personality. Okay, she was quiet but strong. And basically, Mr. Serna said, I'm going to resign as the chair if the women become part of this. I don't think that's ever been talked about. But he basically said, I'm not going to, and Olivia said, basically, bullshit, we're going to continue, and we're going to be there with you, and we're going to sit by you, and we're going to give our opinion. So that had a big impact on the women, more women getting involved and knowing that they had power, and that it was important to have the whole family involved, because the women are the ones that control the family. And basically, the women said, no, we're going to participate because we're talking about our children. We're talking about our future. We're talking about the future of our kids. And that had a big impact on the involvement of women in Raza Unida. And I think we have a lot of leadership that came out of there, of Raza Unida. And the men pretty much gave up, and they said, well, yeah, you're right, we need them. And we need them to participate. And because they're involved, their children were involved, because the women control the family. And so I think that was the biggest turning point, I think, in regard to involvement of women. And I think in the past, and I think back about my mom, and, the women usually stayed home and the men worked. That was the generation before us, okay? And so, you had all these women with such great potential. We said, we can't just put them aside, These are the people that can turn a whole family around. And the mothers can turn the whole family around. I see that time. I live in Crystal City. I live in Yakima, Washington, and it's the same story over there. The women have so much power.
That's very true. It's still true today. Sarah, Dr. Gutierrez mentioned the census, and we were having a conversation earlier about why this play is still timely in 2023. I know when I watched this for the first time, I got very emotional, even though I have no connection to Crystal City, but the stories that I've heard from my family and whatnot, and I assume so many of you watching live stream and in this theater can relate to that. But beyond the emotion, there's another reason that it's perfectly that we're having this conversation today.
Yeah, today is January 22nd, and it's the 20th anniversary of the U.S. Census Bureau declaring that this is language the census uses, okay? But today is the 20th anniversary of the census declaring Hispanics as the largest minority group in the United States. So when that happened back in 2003, when that happened, a lot of people thought, oh, okay, well, you know what happens with census data? Money follows. So we thought that that declaration was going to mean that money was going to come into the Latino communities to, help us in all kinds of ways. That really hasn't happened. And so, I mean, that's something that I think we should be interrogating. Our numbers are there. How are we being supported? Including in the arts and culture, but including in terms of education. Here in Texas, the majority of public school students are Latino, and the majority of those are Mexican American. And in fact, last year, the Census Bureau declared that the largest of any demographic group in Texas is Latinos. So, we've got these numbers, but the money has not followed. And so those are things we need to be thinking about, and not just the money, but also general concepts of representation. So when we think about what the students were protesting in Cristal, that they weren't learning about their own history in school, we still have that problem. We have a big problem with that. And it doesn't really, it doesn't track with the evidence, not only because of the numbers of Latino students that are in school right now, but also there was a really important study that came out in 2021 where they tracked students, public school students, who were ninth graders and were struggling in school. Those students were enrolled in a high school ethnic studies class, and those students saw their attendance rates shoot up. They saw their graduation rates shoot up, and they saw their college enrollment rates shoot up. That's the impact that being able to see yourself in your school curriculum has. So we should be funding that, right?
Yes, the answer is yes. We should be funding that. So I want to try to connect some dots and then get some questions from the audience. So we know from the experience in the play and the things that y'all have shared, there's a connection here, right? The more that we know about ourselves and we hear our stories and we know our history, the more information we get, like the students were sharing with their parents, that leads to more action, it leads to more registered voters, which leads to more of getting what we want and what we need and what we deserve. So Dr. Gutierrez, I read a lot about you and watched some interviews, and some of the people that, the students that were here also shared. You are a really great teacher in getting people organized and how to ask for what they want. So what is your advice in doing that today if what is Sarah's saying is true, is we need that education in our schools? How do we do it?
You know, the first person in the entire University of Texas system, that's a lot of universities, to try to get a PhD in what was called government at the time. Well, you're looking at him. One in the entire state. And then who graduated to get a PhD? And that's why the doctor business, I don't cure disease, I cure ignorance. but that PhD, you're looking at him again. First one out of, I don't know if Maggie's still here, first one out of the Mexican American Studies program in Austin, at UT Austin. That's ridiculous, okay? But a lot of us defeat ourselves. We don't think we can. I don't know if I was born different, but I'm sure that my mother and father had a lot to do with it because they told me you can and you will. Now I had an incident in when I was a junior in Cristal, and the principal was John B. Lair, Lair. Big grandote guy. He was about 6'3". I thought I was gonna grow up to be like him. I wanted to be like him. He was tough, grandotote, and rough. Now, I'm sure you still do the same thing. The juniors put on the prom for the seniors. And they pick from the sophomore class the prom servers. So they learn how to do some of these things. Well, we did that. But in my year in high school, 58 was my freshman year, 62 was the graduating year. In 60, the president of a junior class, he crumpled up the paper, threw it away. Pulled out another piece of paper, drew a line in the middle, said, we're not going to have race mixing. And he writes names, Anglo names on one side, Mexican names on the other side. And he said, here, these are your prom servers. Y yo, believing in my high school curriculum, because you have to believe the stories they tell you to pass the test, right? And it says majority rule and democracy and, the secrecy of the ballot and all this business. I said, well, I'm going to go to my class. I'm going to call a meeting. I'm going to tell them what you just did, because that's not what we voted for. So all of his 6'2", 6'3" leans over to me, stands up, and he says, Gutierrez, you do this, and I'm going to expel you. Now, what do you do when you're about 15, 16 years old, and this principal is telling you that, and you know at home what's going to happen? Well, I didn't know what was going on inside me, but I hated that man that moment. I knew I could not do anything about it. So I had to learn to channel that hate into rage, into constructive action. Means you got to have a plan. So at that moment, I said, in my mind, I know there's a school board. I know that one day I'm going to come back, and the first thing I'm going to do when I get on that school board is fire him. It took me 6 years, but I did that because I can and I will. So that attitude is what you need to do, because you're talking about doing something for you, for yourself, for your family, for others. If you don't fix it, nobody else will. No one's going to give it to you. And sometimes you got to get tough and you got to get mean and you got to do things that people don't like. So what? You can and you will.
Thank you. Liz, what do you want to add about advice for young people, older people, all of us that want to make the change in our communities, in our schools?
Well, I think really one of the big things that needs to happen, it has to happen within their families too. It isn't, what happens many times, I see the parents are too busy working, they're too busy trying to survive, and they don't see the value of sending them to this kind of an event to open their eyes, their brains. And I think that needs to happen more. So this play actually needs to go to Crystal City. Because many times the parents are so busy working and just trying to survive. I see that where I live right now. They're just trying to survive, And are they invited to the política? No, la política, no, la política no me importa, Luz está loca porque anda en la política, But it's all about politics, and I think the lady here next to me, Sarah, Dr. Sarah, you need to educate the parents so that the parents can also motivate the children. That's what it's all about, They go to school, you're in that phase right now, girlfriend, boyfriend, okay, going to the prom, doing this, but you're forgetting about the most important thing. You want to get a good education, you want to go to college or get a career that'll help you move up, You don't want to do the same thing your parents are doing. You know, you want to be able to get to the next level. And a lot has to do with the mentoring that goes on in the schools. And you don't have a lot of mentors, I don't think, many times. And so you need to have this play, you need to have people come in, but you need to demand it. You all need to demand it. Then they're not going to do it because, oh, let's go ahead and bring them in, you know, that. No, you got to say, this is what we want. And you've got to set some goals for the rest of the year. Many of you are seniors, you know, you're going to move on. But you have to set up goals on what you can do to better educate yourself and inform yourself so that you too can inform your families. That's what I would recommend.
Thank you. And I think that's really key because of what we already said, that when the parents supported them, they felt empowered to do it. Sarah, the last question I have is for you. Mockery is chronicling all of the civil rights moments. Where does Crystal City walkouts fall in this list of civil rights moments for Mexican Americans?
We're a very young organization. If you haven't heard of us, we were just founded in the fall of 2019 and sort of launched into producing public programming right when the pandemic took off. So most of our programming has been virtual and online. But I will just say one of the most heart-touching things that I've experienced through our programming over the last couple of years is how many adults have commented on our programs. I never learned this in school. I heard something about this through family stories, but seeing some scholar, you know, telling this history, it solidifies for me that this was real, that those family stories weren't just rumors, that was real, and that, you know, they are disappointed that that was not taught to them in school, and that they do want better for the next generation. So that is definitely something we are working on. One of the other things that we hope to do over the years is to give people this sense that Mexican American civil rights is not a new thing. It is something that our people have been fighting for generations. And so while it is true that there were some generations, and this is, you know, somewhat true just of being an immigrant, that you just want to kind of fit in once you arrive, but that doesn't mean that they didn't find ways to create networks. I'm just thinking particularly in the late 19th century here in San Antonio, we had a number of mutual aid societies here on the west side. So those were organizations where oftentimes first generation Mexicanos, but not necessarily, they may have been here for a few generations, they would put money into a pool so that if somebody had some kind of an emergency, they would have money to help them. And that was because we couldn't get insurance. We couldn't, you know, get things like that. So we had to create our own networks of help. But certainly, the work of Mayo, the Mexican American Youth Organization that Jose Angel and others were involved in here in San Antonio, talk about a watershed moment. Talk about, you know, just this moment of seizing the energy of a larger national civil rights movement that was happening in other communities, but making it its own Mexicano flavor here in San Antonio, and then taking it down to the valley. Jose Angel and his legacy, he's still with us though, okay? But what Jose Angel it did really solidifies San Antonio as the cradle of Mexican American civil rights history from a national perspective.
Thank you for that context. How old were you when y'all founded Mayo?
Oh, wow. You know, even the founding is kind of nebulous. We arrived, you know, none of these questions are easy to answer because you're not going to believe this. I told you that I was the only one in the entire university system trying to get a PhD. Well, before that, I had to go to the junior college in Uvalde, okay? Because it was the only place we could go. In San Antonio, there's always been Our Lady of the Lake. There's always been Incarnate Word. There's always been St. Mary's, but they're private Catholic schools y cuestan mucho. There was no UTSA, no public school here. There was a San Antonio college, a junior college. The closest four-year university to Crystal City back then was Sul Ross in Alpine, or you had to go all the way to Houston to go to the University of Houston. You could also go to Austin. But back then, like she was explaining a little bit ago about the mutual societies, they existed because we couldn't get services. We couldn't get into the schools. You couldn't get into UT Austin because my father died when I was 12. My mother and I became migrants. Can you believe that I was classified as a non-resident when I applied to UT Austin because my mother was in Wisconsin working in the fields at that time? You know, they charge more for out-of-state residents, right? So I couldn't afford to go to Austin if they would have admitted me, but they just rejected me outright because of that classification. So we ended up going to Kingsville. Kingsville was the closest school. And Luz can tell you this. The best and the brightest, because it was rare as to who graduated from high school back then in the 60s. So what we had there, there were 1,026. I know because I organized them. Well, we organized them. Okay, but we were not married then. That's another story. 1,026. Okay, and they gave us IDs, but they were little paper clips for the football game. No ID, no photograph, no nothing. And it's true, the gringos cannot tell one Mexican from another. So we organized to get all those 1,026 ballot voting things, and we would vote. All of those 1,026. We did not win the years that she and I were there going to school, but we made it possible for the next class in 1966 coming in won. And so the city government, the school government, the funding, all that changed from then on at A&I. We did walkouts, we did protests, you name it, we did it, okay? Because to get back to the personal, and she can verify, when we had socials, what they call the dateless dance on Thursdays in Kingsville, and we get to dance with everybody, the gringos would get 3 or 4 songs, and they would dance on the floor. Then they would play 2 or 3 songs for blacks. They would dance. There were a few blacks. And then they would play 2 or 3 songs for us, and we would dance. But we would not dance with one another, okay, with just each other. And that was on the top floor, no air conditioning. It was terrible, but that's how we began to meet one another and learn about each other. And you could see the segregation and enforce it. That was the only school where we had to take orientation and fail and pay tuition to fail because that's how they made money off of us at that particular time. When we were juniors, we had to take another exam in English to see if we could still pass and graduate. It was something else. It was unbelievable. But that was the only place you could go to. There was no UTRGV. There was no Laredo International University. None of that. No University of Houston, Victoria. All were junior colleges. All of them, except Sul Ross. Kingsville, and then up there. That's why we all ended up there. And that is the second cradle of civil rights, because all the people that later made history came out of there. We were all very angry young people with degrees, and we had to learn their books. Their books don't lie in terms of how you can do things. They just lie about letting you do it. Okay? So we figured out how to form a political party and so on. I did the research here at St. Mary's Law School, at the library. How do you form a political party? Because look, it's very simple. And I'll shut up. In the primaries, think about this. In the primaries, the winner has to be 50% plus 1. And if there isn't a winner, there has a runoff until you get 50% plus 1. But in November, who wins? The most votes. Plurality. So think about this. So you got a community, 26 counties, remember? And there's 60% of the voters are white, but they're going to split between 30 and 30 Republican, 30 Democrat, and Raza is 40, you have Raza in either party, who's going to win? Duh. So divide and conquer them instead of us. So now, I promise to shut up. We never lost the Raza Unida party. We were derailed. We were outlawed as a regional party. So then we came back in 72. Okay, well, we'll make it a state party. And we did that. And then again, we were outlawed this way by changing the number of votes. That if we did not get 26% of the vote, we could not remain on the ballot. Okay? Well, we did not get there. The Republicans got 25. So that's why they give them just 1 little percent bump. Okay? So we never lost that. We did the national party then because others, like in Colorado, California, and Wisconsin, so said, we want to do a Raza Unida party. And that's when the National Raza Unida Party spread the 17 states plus the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. Frank Schiffer Corona de San Antonio was the one we elected in Adams Morgan School District in Washington, D.C., okay, with the same kind of formula. If we organize ourselves and we stick together and we vote, we win. You know, you can do the math yourself. You know, if you've got 3 on one side and 3 on the other side, or 300 or 30,000 or 3 million, and you lose one and it goes to the other side now has 4, and this side now only has 2. So by losing one person that turns against you, you need 3 to make up for that one that you lost. So you got to have a lot of discipline, a lot of unity, a lot of solidarity, a lot of vigilance to keep the group together, okay? Because it's not easy to get 3 people to substitute for 1. You can do the math on paper. Political math is different. So if you keep the group together, we will win, and you can divide them, okay?
I want to say something that I forgot to say originally, is you need what are called community-based organizations to bring people together. You like some people, no me gusta la política. No me gusta la política. But if you have a community-based organization, be it a woman's group, be it a men's group, you actually have time to sit and talk. And part of what happens many times with our people is they're not informed. They're not informed. That's the biggest problem. And you, Doctor, you were saying a little bit ago, you know, how do we get resources in to help the communities? Well, you got to set up nonprofit organizations that they can choose their leadership and they can see what they want to focus on. You do, because educating the community is a big part of winning in a community. So I want to share.
Thank you, and that's why I'm glad we have Sarah on the panel with Mock Creek, because I think it's a lot of what they do. So I heard you can and you will organize your community and do the math. So great lessons. Your family has to get involved, and we have to stay informed and know our history. So with that, I also want to acknowledge the people who have been watching. They love you all. They're so happy to hear from you all. It's a lot of love. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Dr. Gutierrez. So thanks for watching. David, could I ask you to run the mic again, if you would? Does anyone have a comment or a question they'd like to share?
My name is Dolores, and I just wanted people to know that one of the things that we can really be conscious of is how many books are being banned in the schools right now. And I think young students, young people should find out. For example, one of the major books that has been banned in several school districts in Texas is called Separate is Never Equal by Sylvia Mendez. Sylvia Mendez and her family's fight for desegregation, which was set in the 1940s. It's been banned from public schools in Texas. And I think it would behoove us to find out. I realize a lot of people complain because there are several LGBTQ books that have been banned, but these books are also being banned, and we need to find out why, and we need to find out who's behind it. Because when we start doing that in the public schools, there are the books that are being used in class, they're not teaching, some of them aren't even teaching Martin Luther King anymore. This is Texas. So why? Why don't these Crystal City people know about Jose Angel Gutierrez or about the marches for equal representation. It's because the Abbott and the people in the state legislature that is going on right now are banning this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. I read a tweet. Yes, thank you. I don't know, someone else had their hand up. I read a tweet that said, as soon as you see a banned book, just talking to students, go to your public library or online library to figure out what find that book and figure out what they don't want you to read about.
Oh, hi. My name is Ramiro Luna. I'm actually an activist. I've been an activist for the last 20 years. I just recently co-founded an organization called Somos Texas. And it's really like building in the legacy that y'all started as far as engaging Latinos year-round and making sure that there's a dedicated force to encouraging Latinos to come out and vote and just really uplifting our cultura. But for like the new generation or the people who are starting in this plight, you know, I wanted to see if you had any advice as to like what to consider and things like that.
Wow. Yeah, in 25 words or less, right? Mira, I don't know that I can answer that in 25 words or less, but I'll give you my address and email, and I'll answer you, and I'll tell you. Better yet, you can read books. But this is what I wanted to ask you. Severita, are you here? Are you still the librarian in Cristal? No. Okay. Librarians. And I know there's a school board member, Espinosa. Where are you? Okay. All right. You know, because of this, the librarian. Okay. I want you to know, librarian lady, at this point, I'm working on my 19th book. There's 18 published books by me, plus 3 children's books. You should have every one of those in the library in Cristal, and every one of you should know that you could do the same thing I just did. Every one of you's got more than one story, okay? I said 18 plus one that I'm working on now, and 3 children's books. No. Okay, but the reference to the books is, that's where the answer is. You know, every book has got lessons. Every book tells you how some people did what, okay? And there's books on well, there's even Chicano studies for dummies, you know, like the series of books on for dummies. There's even one on that. So, but you contact me, I'll give you my address, and we can talk specifically about what you're doing.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to add that it's so important for you, if you already have an organization, to build on it and use the media right now, social media, to be able to build the organization, because there are resources out there. But it's a lot of work. We did a lot of work. We were smart. I mean, I have to tell you, we were very smart, because you have to put down things in paper, okay? You have to have it available when they say, well, what do? You should be able to give us a piece of paper today, or say, go to my Facebook or whatever. Because you need to grow your organization. You can't just exist, you and 5 or 6 people. You have to grow it and build on it to be able to get the resources the doctor here was talking about, you know? But if they don't know you exist, well, what are you doing in San Antonio, you know, or wherever? So you have to build on your organization. You have to build it to the point where you have things available to share with people, to share and let them know what it is you need, you know? And if you need resources, what are you going to use them for? That's very important to build but I strongly believe in community-based organizations. That is the base of building.
Good evening, panel. How you doing? My nombre es Sergio Anchondo. I'm from Southern California. I am a Chicano from the barrio. And so here I've been in Texas for about 12 years. I'm a late bloomer, earning my degree in Texas A&M in communications, and a minor in border and Latino studies. And it resonates to me what occurred in Crystal City in California when I'm a Gen X product, so that tells my age, right? So I went through an era of time in attending school when we had integration and questioning staff and teachers and attendants. Where are we in history? And a lot of times, because I look güero, people always tell me, or friends, or my Chicano, vato friends, and rucas, I would say back in the days, you can pass. You're not gonna have a problem or being forced assimilation. And my grandma was a teacher in Chihuahua. And so my first dialect was Spanish. So when I grew up as a güero with red hair, my English or speaking verbal skills were very low. So they placed me in ESL. That's what they thought I needed. I was a very much activist in California. Fast forward, coming here into Texas, one of the things I've noticed with my younger folks, that they don't know any history of where we began, where we're going, or what we should be doing going forward. I do see a lot of Texas pride in Texas from my Latinos and Chicanos here in Texas. But one thing has died and I've not seen active is the word of Chicanism, or making that to be, because the footprint in Crystal City was Chicanos movement, with Dolores being involved. And I met her a couple years ago at Palo Alto College. But I want to ask you, do you see a movement among our Chicano brothers and sisters, especially our youth? Do you see that movement arising? Because I've seen it's kind of dead here in Texas. I would like to see it live again.
You went on for too long on the speech, so I forgot the question at the end. No, that's the answer. No, this is a different generation. They don't use the word Chicano. In fact, the play stressed a lot about language. Well, that was one of the demands, and we did pass what we call now B3 education: bilingual, bicultural, biliterate. You can speak Spanish perhaps, but you can't read it and write it. So you're not B3, you're just 1B. So that's what we passed back then. Okay? Now that was killed immediately, because if you can talk to grandma and grandpa, you'll learn a lot of oral history. So they don't want you to talk to grandpa and grandma. That's why you're monolingual, you're Hispanic, okay? Real high Hispanic. No pueden hablar español. So no, every group has their own kind of identity. And now, the people that couldn't speak Spanish began objecting, because of the movement that was coming, to saying Chicano and not saying Chicana. Okay? They knew that much about Spanish, that O meant masculine and A meant feminine. And they were upset that why it was always Chicano, and why do we call ourselves Mexicanos and not Mexicanas? That was the beginning of this movement now to be inclusive and diverse and whatnot. And then now we got this brilliant idea that we should all be Latinos. Okay, let me explain that one. We are a big product of Fernando VII and all the way to Carlos V. Those are Spanish kings. And that's who said, y'all are Hispanos, okay? And along comes another guy, Napoleon III, who says, no, in Francés, no. You're mine, you're Latinos. That's why it's called Latin America. He occupied Mexico. He put a French emperor in Mexico, Maximilian, okay? And that's where we became Latinos. So our brilliant Hispanics said, I'm not Hispanics, I'm Latina. De Guatemala, Guatepeor. And now we got another wave coming saying, oh no, I don't like that. I want us to be Latin X. That's the new one. So no to the Chicano business. Now, that's the word. Under Latinx, you can have the same agenda. And there's nothing wrong with the inclusivity. There's nothing wrong with diversity. There's nothing wrong with equity. But every time you hear somebody talking about that as the rationale, ask them, where's the audit? Because talk is cheap. We want me to be inclusive. You want me to be diverse. You want me to be equitable, but not you. the school boards, the universities, the departments, the banks, the corporations. Ask them to do an audit to prove to you that there's meat behind their rhetoric. Otherwise, it's put a weedy, 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 weedy. It's not divide and conquer. It's include and destroy. Okay? So not just remember divide and conquer. Think about include and destroy, because they're asking you to dilute your power as who you are, because you don't know who you are. Again, because of the Anglo-centric education and so on and so on.
I feel
Carmona needs to bring me the speaker, the lecturer, Our Lady of the Lake, to spend a semester answering these kinds of questions.
I feel attacked. I use Latina, but that's okay. We'll go on.
I'm Cecilia Garcia Huerta. This is my husband, Dr. Candelario Huerta. And we definitely remember you from Texas A&I, both born Kingsville, Texas. And someone mentioned goal setting. And I wanted to tell these young people how that happened for me. First day, junior high school. Sit there, English teacher says, Cecile. No answer. Cecile, continuously, Cecile. Finally, I said, I'm Cecilia. Is that who you're talking about? Is that whom you're looking for? And he said, ma'am, in here, you are Cecile. For the 200 plus days of my junior English class, he and I battled. Cecile, I said, Cecilia is here. Now, how did that become a goal? In that between us, 5 college degrees, 3, 2. I made sure that my 2 degrees were so that I could help be there for the children who are being called Cecile versus Cecilia. And the struggle of wanting to be proud of just a name that was wanting to be taken from me. It just, that again became a goal for me. Simple, and it has worked for 60 plus years. And I also wanted to mention something that wasn't presented tonight was the CYO. Being that no Hispanic.
What does this stand for?
Well, CYO, Catholic Youth Organization. At no time had Kingsville High School ever had a Hispanic homecoming queen. The CYO, Catholic Youth Organization, which met once a week at church, at the Catholic Church, taught us about block voting. I didn't hear any of that this evening, but I know it was instrumental in helping those of us who had no idea how we were going to be able to make our votes count. It may not have been a city council, a position of great power, but it would recognize who we were. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for sharing your story and sharing about CYO. I can't see what's going on. Are we do one more? Okay, we'll do one more.
Okay, my name is Candelario Huerta. I was born in Kingsville. I received my bachelor's in education at Texas A&I in 1971. My master's in early childhood education in Washington State University, my doctorate in bilingual education at Texas A&I. I just want to say to the young people that when you get into a position where you have to make a decision about what your future is going to be involved with, I was the director of migrant education in Beeville ISD, which is north of Corpus. And since both my parents were already educators, I led a fairly middle-class life. They struggled. They beat their heads into the wall and did all the menial work to get their education. But for me, they had done that. They wanted something better for their sons and daughter. So I did decide to go into education. Anyway, in Beeville, I was the director of migrant education, and La Raza Unida in 71, 72 was just in its heyday. I mean, it was en toda la fuerza. I did not know very much about it. I did not know very much about La Huelga going on in California, the United Farm Workers Union, and all of that. But I had 3 other administrators from my office who were Mexican-American. They called themselves Chicanos. They confronted me one afternoon and said, you know, we are members of La Raza Unida. We support La Huelga. I said, yes. You're either with us or against us. I saw 3 other guys, but that I knew they weren't going to fight me, but I had to make a decision. I said, I'm with you.
Yeah, smart guy.
A year and a half later, or a year later, I'm about to finish. I talk too much. My wife says so. A year and a half later, I was offered a position as a head resident at a university dorm in Washington State, so I decided to get my master's. Me and this other gentleman drove from Corpus Christi all the way to Pullman, Washington, where Washington State University is located. Let me finish. We got there at about 4 o'clock in the morning. At 6 o'clock, I was on the picket line at Safeway, marching with my fellow students. And when you make a commitment, stick to it. Realize what you're getting into and go for it. And don't lose las ganas. Gracias.
Oh. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I think it does say a lot when people want to share and what they've been through, and for others to learn from. And that's what we did on the stage, in the audience, and really in this play. So we're going to thank you all for being here. Students, again, thanks for being here today. Y'all are it. Y'all can do it. And y'all will. And I want to recognize, I see him walking back there, David Lozano. Not only does he write plays, but he runs the microphone. Thank you so much, David. You're amazing. Thank you for coming to San Antonio. So once again, a round of applause for the panelists, Dr. Jose Angel Gutierrez, Luz, Dr. Sarah Gould. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Christina Bailly and the Guadalupe Center for having us. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. And follow me online. I'm Kim Means What. Have a good day.
Bye, world. Bye, world.
Bye, everyone.